welcome to Borgcast Lower Decks 3.10, The Stars at Night, with Amory and Peter.
Yes, and Patrick Moore. No. That was an old astronomy? Yes. Let's get astronomy and astrology mixed up. But astronomy show on BBC back in the day. Anyway,
still on now.
Still on now, but not with Patrick Moore because he's a bit dead for that sort of thing.
Yes, we've had this conversation already.
We have. Deja vu already. Anyway.
Previously on Star Trek Lower Decks.
We want to talk deja vu. When we covered trusted sources last time, we heard from Wendy Heatherwood on alternatives to the US Texas and California classes. I suggest the Hampshire-class USS Basingstoke, which has a reputation for going only on the most boring missions. The USS Southampton and USS Portsmouth, whose captains are bitter rivals.
Yeah.
And transferring from one to the other gets you blacklisted by your former crewmates for life.
Yeah.
On the same topic, we heard from Ol, the USS Digbiff, the West Midlands class, which I suggested probably looks like a bus. Pori suggested, and here we go. Shall I do the Scots accent?
I'll go.
Apologies in advance. The USS Milgavie, which is a Strathclyde class. The USS Oktumukti, which is a Fife class. Okay. And the USS Wick, which is the Highlands and Islands class. Yes. Meanwhile, Lee Metcalf suggested the USS Glades Shopping Centre, Bromley class. That's quite a local one. And the USS Dogging Spot, which is Shooters Hill class. And from Peter Dillon, suggested the USS Crawley, very close to his heart, I know.
The shithole class.
That's the one, yes. And then Wayne Peters, who, dust off the old Welsh accent, haven't I?
Is that going to sound any different to your Scottish?
No, unfortunately, it's going to sound very Pakistani and therefore unacceptably racist. So I'm not going there. The USS Harlech, the Gwynedd class. Gwynedd, yes, you're right. Double D's in it. Yeah, Gwynedd class runs on anthracite crystals, apparently.
Right.
Yes. So thank you everybody who chipped in on that crazy idea of mine that actually, Starship shouldn't all just be named after United States places.
Yes.
Definitely. Anyways, on to tonight's episode.
Admiral, I assure you, the Cerritos crew takes their duties seriously.
Captain Freeman's right. The Cerritos is a necessary part of the fleet. However, my automated Texas-class ships are her superior, with zero human error.
They haven't even been tested.
I recommend decommissioning the California class and let the Texas class handle second contact.
Starfleet was founded as a way for humanity to advance into the stars. This would undo centuries of progress.
Captain, I'm sorry, but there are plenty of other crewed ships in the fleet. The Council has decided to take Admiral Buenamigo's advice and shutter the California class.
Already on the title, Stars at Night, apparently, according to Jeffrey Mark Hyman, is a reference to a traditional US folk song, which I suppose I'm going to have to play you now, aren't I? Yes.
Oh.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas, the sage in bloom.
I stuck my thumb right up my bum, deep in the heart of Texas.
Lovely.
Sorry.
Jeff relates the story that in 1942 the BBC banned the song during working hours on the grounds that its infectious melody might cause wartime factory hands to neglect their tools while they clapped in time with the song. Wow. Times were clearly hard back then.
Yeah. So, you start with the first officer's log, and they're at Douglas Station being kitted out.
Yeah, they're in for repairs yet again.
After
But, great continuity.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Captain Freeman has been summoned to justify herself.
There are worker bees. You see the worker bees?
No.
Oh, you never noticed the good stuff.
And then Admiral Buenamigo is one of the ones there, and he's talking up his AI project, and he says, we've got to decommission the Cali class because there's no human error there. And she's like, fine, but my crew got to hear it from me. I don't want to hear it from anyone else. But anyway, so that's your teaser, is the Cali class is being decommissioned. And
yeah, I mean that's a thing, isn't it? Why would they decommission a whole class of ships just because the crew of one of them is rather eccentric? Or are all Cali class ships crews like the Cerritos? Because it's not an issue with the ship.
The idea is that the Cali class was created for second contact missions, and these AI ships are better.
Well, that's the theory.
That's the theory.
But
you
what
would
the reason
decommission-
the reason he's using for getting rid of them is because of human error. But he's not talking about decommissioning the whole Starfleet. There's other ships that are going to have crews.
But
So
what he's arguing is that
the Cali-class crews are so bad.
and that second contact missions in particular, they're not first contact. He's not trying to say AI does first contact. He's saying...
He's basically saying that Cali-class crews are inept. That's what he's basically saying. So you get rid of human error by turning it over to a computer. But are all the other Cali-class ship crews like that? I mean, we've seen a few, but not for long.
No. And also, it's a waste of resources just to get rid of them all.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the bottom line is this is done for a joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, close examination, it doesn't work at all. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I do like the fact that this isn't at Starbase 1 for a change, which seems to be the only starbase that features in the Trek series these days. And we get Ransom looking out the window and we see his reflection. I love it when they do that. That lovely attention to detail. And that must be a real pain to animate, you'd think. But anyway,
Yeah.
Ironically, it's probably all done by computers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, not all of it will be.
Well, they've got a program, haven't they? But yeah. And attention to detail. Did you notice the tiny lamps on the desks?
No.
Yeah, they're exactly the same ones from Star Trek 6.
Yeah, because that's what I watched Star Trek 6 for, the fucking lamp.
You watch it for the whole experience, clearly. I got very excited when I noticed that. Expect pictures on Tumblr and Facebook.
Of fucking lamps?
Of lamps, yes. And you go, oh yeah, and be impressed, I guarantee.
Really? What exactly are you wagering on me being impressed by fucking
You'll
lamps?
be so impressed, I'll be in for a good time, I suspect.
You're very lucky that you being in for a good time does not ride on me being impressed.
Yeah, I suppose that's a bit true.
Fucking lamps. What are you fucking on?
But just, these little details I like. It's not just me that notices. I mean, they put them in there for a reason,
Yeah. They're like, I know, let's make twats really happy and use the same...
And it worked.
Fine. Anyway. Boimler comes in and he's heard gossip from someone and someone and someone and someone, and Tendy's like, oh, what, him? He's a gossip king, he's never wrong. And, how are they going to cope? And then Boimler starts doing impressions.
Yeah, I quite like them. But,
which I like. And
but it's a very hoary old gag. He's behind me, isn't he, basically,
Yeah.
as well?
But what I do like is instead of him being angry, he's really upset.
Yes.
He's like, I was going to ask for help my phaser. And then Boimler's like, no, I can't, I can't be redeployed if one of the senior officers is mad at me. And then they all start worrying about Mariner, which is sweet.
Yeah.
Mariner, meanwhile, is basically being Indiana Jones.
Yep. But the idol this time, you notice, is a Klingon.
Yeah.
And I love the way that Lower Decks has made use of the Ferengi as well. They're well suited to fun escapades on the silly level of Lower Decks. So, yeah.
Yes. But there wasn't an Alfred Molina Ferengi, though.
No, there wasn't. No, well, she was being chased by the Ferengi, so
Yeah.
it would have been nice to have perhaps a Bowley and Alfred Molina. That would have been cool.
Yeah, that would work. That would work. And then she's talking to, what's her face? I think the surname's Aberdeen, but I can't remember her first name.
Petra.
Yeah. And she's like, how is this mission funded? And it all starts to seem a little bit
Sus.
possibly dodgy. And then meanwhile, back with the admirals, Freeman has arranged a mission off with the Texas class. It's like, we've got to win this. So Ta'ana is really stressing and looking like she needs a groom. And...
She's going out with a horsewhip.
I love it.
Bay.
It's brilliant. Meanwhile, Ransom is teaching a class the Riker manoeuvre.
Yes, excellent. And Ta'ana also references having served on an Oberth, which is, of course, the old science class from Star Trek 3.
And the one that looks like a sex toy.
I always think a canoe, but that's where my brain goes.
So you're more interested in the lamps. You should pay attention.
To the sex toys, clearly, yeah. But you did ask whether Ransom does the Riker sit, and now it's been confirmed.
Yeah. He not only does he do it, he teaches it as a class. And then, as they start off, I don't know whether I was aware of this before or not, but the thing that Freeman says is warp me.
Yes.
It's like, they don't all have to have a thing, Because otherwise you'll run out of things.
Yeah, it is a bit silly. But anyway.
Yes.
Looking forward to Spock's thing, so to speak.
What was it? I would like the ship to go. Or
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, I love it. So they go to their first planet and they don't spend enough time actually talking to the people who come out to greet them. It's just like, no, deploy this there, deploy that there. And then the Alido is just hanging around initially while Buenamigo smokes a cigar.
Because that's what villains do in Trek these days. because,
Yeah.
that's not at all stupid. Mm.
Yeah.
The Alido's interface, by the way, sort of the red and yellow lines.
Yeah.
That's something we'll be seeing later on in our coverage of season 2 of the original series.
Oh, okay.
When we have the original story about a computer controlling a starship going wrong. You'd think they'd have learnt their lesson by now, but no, as we know, they haven't.
No. So that then the Alido does appear and just beams a load of shit down.
Yes, this is Galadon, which is featured in the first episode of Lower Decks, of course.
Oh, okay. And so then they're off to the second mission.
LT-358, which is
Isn't
all
that
very
spo-
Star Trek 2.
Oh, so I thought it reminded me of LV.
Oh, in Aliens, yes.
Yes.
I don't know whether there was a sideways reference to that or not, but no. And yeah, you get a sort of discussion of whether there's life here or not. It's like you just hear those lines from Star Trek 2 about, you know what you'll say.
Yeah. So they're scanning for whether or not there's microbial life, might it be sentient, and it's Tendi who makes them stop and do the scan.
Mm-hmm.
And initially I did think that Freeman was going to be like, no, we just got to go, but her
she does the right thing.
response is, of course, but make it quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that no, it's not a problem. Something often interferes with the tricorder to cause this issue, but it's now caused a delay.
The next mission is a supply run to Okmenic 9, which Freeman refers to as one of those Brigadoon-type planets, which is a reference to Deep Space Nine's very subpar story, Meridian.
Oh,
where
yeah, I
Dax
did, yes.
inconveniently falls in love with one of the inhabitants.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was stupid, wasn't it?
It was. She does a thing, wasn't she, where it might help her and it doesn't really, and she ends up sitting on a rock on her own and crying or something.
Yeah, nearly dies. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lido arrives first and beams down the supplies to the bored inhabitants. The Cerritos misses its window and Buen Amigo laughs like a proper villain. Back on Douglas Station, Tendi is feeling guilty for pointing out the possible presence of life. The others assure her it was the right thing, which gives Freeman ammunition to hurl at Buen Amigo for breaking the Prime Directive. Meanwhile, Rutherford has realised the Alido runs on the AI he coded when he was angry ship racing Rutherford. And it's also the same code he used for Badgie. So
I love that.
He gets a flashback and we find out the mystery officer in charge of his operation was Buen Amigo. Rutherford rushes into Freeman's Zoom meeting and exposes the truth. The Admiral excuses himself by saying, having made Admiral, he's struggled to make a name for himself. He admits he also set Freeman up in Hear All Trust Nothing, and the last episode. Buen Amigo activates full autonomous mode for the Alido. That's going to work well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And orders it to attack the Cerritos, but the ship informs him it no longer takes orders from him and blasts its creator to death.
Yeah.
In accordance with the way these things always go.
But that was, of course, seeded with the whole Badgie thing, because they said we can't have them being run on, with computer with daddy issues.
It then activates the Dallas and Corpus Christi to join on its side in destroying the station. Unfortunate name for the latter. All right, Corpus Christi is a place in the state of Texas, but it's also, of course, named after the body of Christ, which isn't really what you should be, naming your warships.
Well,
and it's come up in the past in the US Navy, and they had to apologise to the Roman Catholic Church and promised never to do it again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's you may as well have a fleet of ships named after religious festivals. The USS Diwali.
Yeah.
You could have the festival class, couldn't you?
Yeah, but, name them all after peaceful festivals, because that's a good idea, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, you could have the principle of a ship of exploration.
Yeah, if it was just a ship of exploration, but the point is particularly these particular ships aren't. They're deadly.
No.
On Quailor 3, Mariner looks into where Aberdeen has been getting her funding, but is caught in the act. But it turns out, in a nice touch, it's Picard that's been funding it.
Yeah, I like that.
Beckett is disappointed that it was nothing nefarious, as she was looking for an excuse to go back to Starfleet, wanting to be part of something for the greater good. Aberdeen shows her the news about the Cerritos, which spurs her on to help her friends. The USS Van Sitters joins the fight. It's a Sovereign class, which is handy, as they've got the model on file from Crisis Point 2.
Yeah.
Presumably named after John Van Sitters, who did the Star Trek Encyclopedia back in the day, and is Vice President of Trek Brand Management. Ugh, what a lovely title.
Does that mean that you could buy like a Star Trek vibrator?
I'd be amazed if somebody hasn't done it, but I probably wouldn't get official recognition. But it would look like an Oberth class.
It would.
Anyway, to save the Van Sitters, Freeman hails the Alido and threatens him with the man who wrote its code, Rutherford. It recognises him and concentrates its fire on the Cerritos, which makes a run for it. I do love it when you get ships in warp firing. It's a really cool look. Texas-class ships are gaining on them, and Freeman is barraged with questions of how to escape, but Boimler demands they use Shax's lifelong ambition of ejecting the warp core and using it as a mine, basically.
I love that though. Everybody's sort of shouting and Freeman's like, "What can I do? What can I do?" And Boimler's just like, "Everybody, shut up and listen to Shax."
He gets a standing ovation down to engineering.
I love
and
that.
turns keys with billups like they do when they're firing nukes from a submarine.
Yeah.
The Alido survives and is about to take them out when Mariner arrives along with a fleet of Cali ships, some of which are returning from previous episodes with the same crew, which is a nice touch, and also, of course, nice for the animators not to have to create new stuff. And together they destroy the final Texas class. We see the Cerritos taking delivery of a new warp core back at Douglas Station. Mariner is welcomed into the bar by her crewmates. Maglimo congratulates Tendi on her thoroughness and announces a new ensign joining her program, Talin, who's the Vulcan ensign we saw in Wage-Douge. She's wearing the elongated rank pins that the McKee Voyager crew do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because she's obviously not fully Starfleet yet. Shax gives Boimler a big hug and announces he's in the bear pack, which brought a tear to my eye. I do love Shax. He always seems to save the day at the end of the season as well. Freeman rightfully apologises to her daughter. Captain Ramsey, Beckett's old friend from Much Ado About Boimler, leads a round of cheers. And the only missing piece is Jennifer giving her apologies for turning her back on Mariner, which we definitely needed. There is a shot of Jennifer as Mariner comes in, but we don't see any interaction with them whatsoever, which is a bit annoying.
Well, maybe it's supposed to signify that that's done.
What do you mean that's done? What, the relationship?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it is, but it's a shame.
Well, they might pick it up. There is another season, we know there is, so they might pick something up next time.
Yes, and possibly the big bad of the season, because we have an end of credits scene here with Badgie appearing in Rutherford's old implants.
Love it.
So, yeah, we didn't have Badgie this season. I think that was a good idea, not to, to bring everything back constantly.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll be the big bad of next season. Yeah.
I love the idea, the big badgie.
The big Badgie, indeed. The main plot doesn't make much sense when you think about it, but it's really just an excuse for a madcap run around the quadrant. The way they seeded bits of the plot in other episodes in this and previous seasons was cool, though, and something other Trek series have failed at, mentioning no names. I love the Boimler plot, and Shax always seems to get something dramatic to do at the end of a season. Mana returning makes sense, though, as I say, it's a shame there's no scene with her and Jen. And, it's a nice ending to the season.
Yeah, it's got proper starship battles in it. You can't complain at the lack of spaceships.
Yes.
And I like as well that when Mariner comes back and Freeman just doesn't know what to say to her, so, why didn't I trust you? Mariner's response is, well, I didn't exactly make it easy for you.
Exactly,
and
which is true.
Because it is true. And her friends sort of were all like, oh, should have stuck for you more or whatever, and she's fine. But yeah, I hope that either they pick up Mariner and Jen next season, or they make it that it's over. I wouldn't like it to be that they've reconciled off screen.
And I thought it was a strong end to what was a strong season as a whole.
Yeah.
Very strong narratively and character-wise. I suppose if there was a weakness, there weren't quite so many laughs this season, I think, as in previous seasons. I wasn't in tears at laughter. I was more often in tears of being emotionally moved, to be honest. So, and obviously Hear All, Trust Nothing was the high point for me. Yeah,
whereas I had a lot of fun with, whatever one it was. Paradoxus, the holodeck movie.
Oh, yes, that was good fun.
Yeah. But overall with this series, you're right, it wasn't as funny, but it made me grin a lot. It didn't necessarily make me laugh, but it made me grin a lot. And I still think it's a lot of fun, but it is... I don't know whether we're going to end up with season 4 going kind of the way of the Orville, which started off being more of a comedy series and ended up taking itself more seriously. I'm wondering if this is going to go down the same route.
It might do, I suppose, yes. Who can say? Well, let's find out what other people thought.
And we've heard from Lee. One day, just one day, in a science fiction show, a robot or AI-controlled thing turning bad will not automatically decide that red lights is a good thing for easy identification.
Yeah, that is a convention, isn't it? Anything that's gone evil gets red eyes, so, yeah. Back from Hammer's Dracula, pretty much.
Well, think about it with the Cylons as well.
Yeah. We've also heard from Jeffrey Mark Hyman. It's a nice, exciting finale, built almost entirely out of elements established in Lower Decks. There's also a nice stash of good character moments. Like last episode, probably a little light on jokes, but I didn't notice that until it was brought up on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think this one's got a couple more chuckles in it. The Boimler Shack stuff is just lovely, so yeah. And we've heard from the Llama God.
Lamgaslog, Scotty, Fixie Tree, Coig, Tricasy Un. let me tell you the thing we Earth people call paradoxes. Now, this is an interesting episode because it seems to be part of an anti-AI rant that Star Trek, and indeed a lot of society right now, is on. Because, I mean, if you look at the recent history of Trek, we've got Picard Season 1 with all the android uprising and the banning of AIs and other things, and then there's obviously all the stuff with Control in Discovery, and then stuff in Prodigy, and now this. And as I say, it's kind of timely. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, because right now there is indeed a lot of talk about AI and its application, and as I say, this seems to express some concerns. Now, the thing is, the problem isn't AI itself, it's about the application of AI. Now, I've spoken to someone who knows about AI, and that will be me, because I did a degree in artificial intelligence, and the thing is that AI is a tool. It's a tool for solving complex problems. It's just another tool in the toolbox of computery things that you can do to solve things and try and make people's lives better. It can be used to help solve really complex mathematic problems, and it can help find solutions which would be tricky and timely to do. You know, this is why you say things like AI is better at playing chess than just simply number crunching, because that could just take forever with all the possibilities. So you use rules. That's what AI is. It's just a set of rules. And to use another example, in my current job, I work for a company that does software that helps librarians manage their collections, and we use machine learning techniques, so a sort of AI, to help predict what books are going to circulate well within certain areas with certain demographics, which will help librarians to manage their spending better, basically, and buy the books they need to do. And that saves them a lot of time having to just ponder over catalogues. They can stop doing that and then get on and do other stuff, other less tedious things. And that's the point of a proper application of AI, is it speeds you up from doing the tedious stuff. It doesn't take over the entire creative process and make creative people like artists and writers irrelevant. Now, that's an incredibly poor application of AI, and it just actually doesn't work, because things like ChatGPT, they're a sort of AI, I guess, but they're mostly just fluffed up autocompletes. That's all it is, and there's nothing particularly intelligent about it. So AI is quite a large umbrella, and what it's all about really is about the people who design it, implement it, and how they use it and the application. And that brings us, I was getting there, that brings us nicely back to this episode, because the AI does play a massive role in this episode, because it's been implemented and used by an idiot. I must say, it's all driven by Buonamigo. At the start of the season when he was introduced, I was like, that he's called that for a reason, isn't he? And yeah, here we go, he is not a good friend. So well done with the naming there, I love that a lot. And he gets it wrong for two reasons. Of course, he overlooked the fact that alongside to help manage AI, you're gonna need humans, because there are the human factors, and this has been addressed in Trek before as well, actually. And also, more importantly, he should have checked the code and made sure it wasn't psychotic first. So yeah, so again, this comes back to being about the people. It's about the people who make the decisions, who are affected, and how they can work with new technologies, and that is Star Trek. And that makes this episode properly Star Trek, which is why I love it, even though it's just this silly cartoon. It's really nice, I really like that. And I forgot to mention earlier, but I should add, the Federation will undoubtedly use other AIs in other aspects of its fleet software anyway, like the software that controls the computers, the voice control, the voice commands. There's a lot of AI in Star Trek anyway. It's what Star Trek posits as being sentient, self-aware AI, and that's a completely different thing to AI. So yeah, it's a complex field. It's a complex field. But yeah, so I love how this episode deals with that. I also like how it deals with the idea of the fact that Buonamigo felt driven to do this because he couldn't do very much. He couldn't shine post-promotion, which does kind of address in its own way the ideas of, what does promotion get you in a post-scarcity society? Not extra pay, because you don't need extra pay. It's just what satisfaction, what fulfillment do you have? And here it's obviously he was driven to get that satisfaction fulfillment by overachieving, and he might have got it a little bit wrong. So yeah, this is a great fun story. I love seeing everyone come together at the end, the whole feeling of unity, the fact that Mariner comes back and then brings all the Cali class together, because Mariner knows that that's what Starfleet's strength is. It's being part of a greater whole, a community. And again, that's some great character growth there we've got from Mariner, because I don't know if we would have seen that in the first season, but that she's come on this journey is just wonderful. And yeah, again, it's the whole ethos of Star Trek, isn't it? And of course, I love the bit with Shax, where having been slightly insulted by Boim at the start of the episode, he eventually gets his hero moment when he finally gets just in the warp core. I've waited my whole life to do this. Yeah, that's great. I just loved all that, even if it's wrong, because that's not what happened. Use gestures in the warp core. The warp core is just a component of the engine. It would be like trying to use your engine block from the car as a bomb. If you throw it at someone, they'll get a nasty bruise, and that's about it. If you want something to explode, you need to throw the fuel tanks, not the bit that just very briefly contains fuel to contain the explosion. Every time they need gestures in the antimatter pods, not the warp core. So, but anyway, that's a constant bugbear of mine in Trek, and it's a trope that's used hilariously here, so I'm going to allow it because it was really funny and very sweet at the same time. And this episode has a whole lot of character beats, and I just love all of it. And really, this is a great season closer, because it cements the place for the Sweetest crew, for the Second Contact, and also for our main Lower Decks characters themselves. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing. My only real problem is how is this dumb, silly comedy cartoon probably the best proper Star Trek that's being aired at the moment? How is it better than Picard? What's going on? No, I'm really complaining about, except for maybe Picard could have been better. But weird, but great. I love it, really can't complain. Between this and Strange New Worlds, we've got some great Trek at the moment. So yeah, I really can't wait for season 4. So as ever, I'll be looking forward to finding out whether anyone else enjoyed this episode and has had as much of a rant as I have. I hope you've all been able to enjoy the sun. I hope that's not too much of a cryptic message this time. And until next time, glad you're in your cast.
How dare you think we'd be reading The Sun? No, wait, I know what you meant. It had up until today, ironically, been very warm.
Today is warm.
Oh, no, it was eventually. Yeah, good point about it. Yeah, we're very fortunate. We have 2 good Trek series at the moment, and 2 out of 3. We can't really complain, can we?
No.
Yeah, AI as a baddie is going to look very dated, I suspect, in years to come. Everybody go, oh, yes, that's very 2020, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's everywhere at the moment, unfortunately.
It is, but then it comes and goes, doesn't it? Because you had bad AIs at one point. Oh, there was loads of films in that with it in at one point as well. Was it the 70s or the 80s? I don't know. I think it's one of those things that comes round. I think it's it happens in phases thing, a bit like the 3D fad. And
yes, the problem with admirals, I mean, obviously, when Kirk was made an admiral, he was never happy and rejoiced at being knocked back down to captain again. So I suppose it is an issue for anybody that doesn't enjoy a desk job.
Yeah, so you don't accept but you don't see it as a promotion. You don't, if what you want to do is be active and involved, you stay a captain. Because if also as well, if the whole thing is bettering yourself, bettering humanity or whatever, then they shouldn't be ambitious for ambition's sake. It should be, I'm ambitious to do X because I love the sound of it. Yeah, rather than this is a higher rank than. Mm-hmm. Or there should be no shame attached to going, you know what, as an admiral, I'm piss bored. Can I do something else now?
Yes.
I mean, if they don't get paid, I'm just thinking, sorry.
It's all right, you're allowed to think.
Oh, good. What did Parry think?
I do hope you like my Scottish accent.
Hello, orgs. Parry here to talk about The Stars at Night. And thanks, Pete, for letting me know that it was actually from a song which I only know the one line of, which is The Stars at Night that shine so bright, crap, 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 deep in the heart of Texas. That's a reference, presumably, for the Texas class. Now, this episode, it's densely packed. I'm going to struggle to fill sort of general opinions of it in 5 minutes, let alone how they managed to fit everything into 25 minutes. But yeah, it's quite a good idea. The idea that finally we find out who the big bad of the series is. It's Admiral Buen Amigo, or is he a Badmiral and not Buen Amigo? My Spanish isn't good enough to know what the opposite of Buen is. But he's actually been behind trying to humiliate the Cali class, and why they've had some sticky missions like the Deep Space Nine one. And I mean, I knew it because I'd seen the episode before, but actually watching this series, you can now see that it did have a thread running through it, but a thread running through it that they don't draw your attention to and go, ooh, foreshadowing, ooh, something's happening. No, we just, Buen Amigo showed up quite a few times, but that's not unusual, to have a regular admiral, or admiral in this case. But yeah, he's wanting to shutter the Cali class, and everyone's panicking. And I quite like Freeman when she says, we'll have a mission race. And they say, what's a mission race? She's like, I don't know, I made it up on the spot. But the mission race itself, again, that's like an episode. That could be a whole episode plot, but that's just like a small part of this episode. Because we also have, Boimler trying to make up with Shax after he offended him, and offended Shax is always fun. I love the fact that Shax is a very frail sense of self and gets very easily offended. You have some shots of Mariner trying to find out who the archaeologist she's with is working for. Turns out to be Picard, perfectly innocent, which again is just quite a fun twist to that. You'd expect something shifty, and they play a little of it for it's something mysterious. Here's my mysterious benefactor who you don't need to know about. Oh, it's actually something perfectly innocent. But I think part of this, again, I like the crew actually stopping their terraforming. They're beaming on the research base because there might be a life form, and there isn't, and that's actually what gets them out. Sort of undoes the result of the mission race. Of course, that then makes Buen Amigo try to destroy the Cerritos, and sadly, as it turns out, and again, I like this, mystery box is not staying open. It turns out that the Admiral who blanked Rutherford's memory was Buen Amigo when he was a commander. And he stole the code that later on went into Badgie, which sadly makes the Alido, I think it was, a ship which has got Badgie's personality, but in a fairly powerful little spaceship. And indeed, we do see it laying into both the starbase. And again, for a comedy series, the attack scenes are quite brutal, with corridors getting vented to the, you've got people being sucked out in space, things exploding. But yeah, it's having some decent fight scenes. The bit which did make me cheer, and which I absolutely loved, was Mariner grouping together all the Cali classes. This is all the Cali. We're not saved this time by the Titan or a big flashy ship. When you saw the Sovereign class coming, you thought, oh, that's it, they're being saved by a big Sovereign class, but actually it struggled as well. And no, it's every Cali class, and I loved seeing captains who we've seen before. It's just a good reference, including that crew that look all a bit like the Cerritos crew, but are different. So that was just that's a real punch the air moment, and it was a lovely finish to the episode for all the Cali classes to win out. Just in general, an absolute roller coaster ride of an episode, but a lot of fun. And indeed, that's the series, and it's been a very solid series. Like, say, maybe one episode that was, I wasn't as keen on the one with Peanut Hamper, but it wasn't a bad episode. It just wasn't as good as the rest. And it was really, Lower Decks has just been, if you like its humour, and I do get some of the people don't like the humour, and humour is always harder to do than drama. So if you don't like the humour, this series is never going to work for you. And I would say, if you're not enjoying the humour, just give up on Lower Decks, because if you're not gelling with it, then it won't work for you. But if you do gel with it, this is an absolute joy. It's a series I've grown to love. It's a crew I love. I even like the Cali class. It's not a nice looking ship, like it's not pretty in any way, but I have a soft spot for underappreciated workhorses in science fiction, and in most things. Can't imagine working in railway maintenance why I get a slight soft spot for underappreciated workhorses, but there you go. And and I think that's where Lower Decks really comes in. So yeah, all in all, top series and top episode. So all I should say is very quickly, thanks for all your work on this. I do look forward to every episode, and I'll feedback on the next time, hopefully on Ulysses 31. But until then, bye for now.
Bye, sir.
Yeah, it is. It's a very dense episode. It packs an awful lot in.
Loads of action. Yes.
Loads of action and loads of stuff, and it's nice to see it calling back and bringing stuff in from the past, but in a way that doesn't make it unnecessarily arc heavy, in a way that doesn't make any fucking sense. Oh, look, it's always her/her mum.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also enjoyed seeing the crew that's a bit like the Cerritos crew with the insect boiler.
Yeah, the alternate one. Yeah, one of the characters walked onto the wrong ship, didn't they, at one point, onto the bridge. And was like, hang on, I'm on the wrong ship here, aren't I? And that was the crew that we saw. So yeah, they're kind of like, not quite an alternate universe version, but yeah.
And yes, the attacks and everything are quite brutal, but in an animated series, at least in the US anyway, in terms of censorship and anything else, you can get away with a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, Buenamigo getting blasted is quite full on, isn't it?
Yeah, but he deserves it.
He does. And yeah, the Cali class is a very silly looking ship. It's stupid having engineering where they do, but it has grown on me over the years, so just because fondness for the crew kind of rubs off on the ship eventually. And as Puri mentioned, this of course is the last episode of Lower Decks so far. We will be covering season 4 when it comes out. Likewise, we shall be covering Strange New Worlds as well with a new season once that's finished. Because whilst we're not worried about it being crap, just didn't want to take any risks.
Yes, we're gonna watch it, and once we've watched all of it, then we will start recording, and we'll let you know what that happens. But in the meantime,
yes,
it's Borgcast 31.
Indeed, yes. So, recording on
Wednesday the 14th.
We'll be covering the first episode of Ulysses 31 over on the Borgcast Galactica feed. There's a link, if you want to watch that, there's a link to it on YouTube, so you don't have to rush out and buy the DVDs.
I don't even know if you can buy the DVDs.
Yeah, they were out a long time ago, so yeah, possibly not easy to get hold of. But yes, so that will be covering in just under 2 weeks' time. Next week, on Thursday the 8th, we'll be covering The Deadly Years from the original series. Yes. Anyways, until then, take care. Cheerio, bye.
Bye, bye.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas.
The art for Borgcast Lower Decks is the fantastic work of Charlie Thorburn.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
We have a Facebook group which you're welcome to join.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can find us over on Mastodon. Our addresses are on the show notes for this podcast.
The coyotes wail along the trail, deep in the heart of Texas. The rabbits rush around the brush, deep in the heart of Texas.
Shut it down!